Stop. Just stop for a moment. Don't scroll. Don't look away. Because if this message found you tonight, something may have already begun. You didn't click this by accident. Out of millions of people, you stopped here. Why? What made your hand pause for just one more second? Most people will never ask themselves that question. They will keep scrolling, and they will never know what almost reached them. But you did. And that changes everything. Take one slow breath. Now ask yourself something. Have you felt strange lately? Not sick, just different. Like certain people suddenly feel heavy to be around. Like old conversations no longer make sense. Like you're standing in the middle of your own life, but somehow it doesn't feel like the same place anymore. Maybe you've been waking up between 2 and 4 in the morning for no clear reason. Maybe you've had moments where everything became strangely quiet, as if the world itself paused for a heartbeat. Maybe you felt pulled toward things you never cared about before, while the things that once excited you now feel empty. Most people call these random moments. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes they happen just before a frequency settles around you. Not everyone notices it. Not everyone is ready for it. But if you're hearing these words, you might be standing much closer than you realize. Don't rush to believe that. Just stay with me. Because in a few moments, something will begin to make sense. Imagine an old radio sitting in a forgotten house. For years it catches nothing but noise, static, broken signals, silence. Then one tiny adjustment is made. Just one. Suddenly, music that was always there fills the room. The station didn't appear. The radio finally matched it. What if you've been living exactly like that radio? What if the life you've been searching for hasn't been hiding from you? What if you've simply been tuning toward it without realizing? That's where tonight becomes important. Because there are moments when your inner frequency doesn't just change. It locks in. And once it locks in, you stop chasing certain things because they begin moving toward you instead. Not because of luck. Not because the universe suddenly picked favorites. Because your choices, your attention, and the person you're becoming begin pointing in the same direction. That's the moment many people miss. They mistake it for coincidence. They ignore the quiet feeling inside them. Then months later, they wonder why life suddenly split into a path they never expected. But here's the strange part. Long before people understood radios, satellites, or invisible signals, stories were told about travelers crossing a silent desert. Every traveler reached the same stone gate. Some walked through it without noticing anything. Others stopped. Not because they saw something, because they felt something. An old guide would always ask only one question. Why did you stop? Most answered, I don't know. The guide would smile. That's how I know you heard it. He never explained what it was. He simply opened the gate. Only years later did those travelers realize that everything important in their lives had begun on the day they couldn't explain why they paused. Now think about yourself. You stopped here. You listened. You stayed. Was it curiosity? Or was something inside you already recognizing a signal your mind hasn't found words for yet? Don't answer too quickly. The answer matters more than you think. If this message feels strangely familiar, if it feels less like learning something new and more like remembering something forgotten, stay until the end of this journey. Because what comes next isn't about convincing you. It's about showing you why certain doors have been closing, why certain people have quietly disappeared from your life, and why tonight may be the last quiet moment before your own frequency chooses a direction that becomes harder to change. Viral line. The frequency that changes your life doesn't knock. It waits until you finally become quiet enough to hear it. Before we go deeper, type, I'm ready, in the comments if you're still here. Subscribe if this kind of journey speaks to you, and take one slow breath. Because the next part begins where almost everyone turns back, and that's exactly where the real transmission starts. You took a breath. Maybe you didn't even realize you did it. That small pause matters more than it seems. Because before any frequency can settle, noise has to lose its control. Most people spend their entire lives surrounded by noise. Not just sounds, but opinions, fears, expectations, constant distractions pulling them in every direction until they can't remember what their own inner voice even sounds like. But something has been changing inside you. You may have tried to ignore it. You told yourself you were just tired, that life was stressful, that everyone feels this way. Yet the feeling kept returning. quietly, patiently, almost as if it wasn't asking for your attention. It was waiting for your permission. Now listen carefully. The frequency doesn't force anyone to follow it. It simply reveals who is already prepared. That is why two people can experience the exact same day, see the same opportunities, face the same challenge. One walks away unchanged. The other discovers an entirely new direction. The difference was never outside them. It was inside. Think back for a moment. How many times did something fall apart, only for you to realize much later it had actually protected you? A friendship ended. A relationship slipped away. A job didn't work out. At the time it felt unfair. You searched for reasons. You blamed yourself. You wondered what you had done wrong. But here's the truth. Sometimes life doesn't remove people because they are bad. It removes them because they belong to a version of you that can no longer continue. That realization is painful, but it is also freeing. Imagine climbing a mountain with a backpack filled with stones. At first, you don't notice the weight. Step after step, it simply feels normal. Then someone quietly removes one stone. Suddenly the climb feels lighter. Not because the mountain became easier, because you stopped carrying what was never meant to reach the top. What if that's exactly what's happening in your life? What if every closed door, every delayed answer, every unexpected goodbye has been one more stone leaving your backpack? Most people fight to keep carrying it. They beg for old doors to reopen. They chase people who have already walked away. They hold on to yesterday because tomorrow feels uncertain. And without realizing it, they resist the very change they've been praying for. But here's what almost nobody understands. The frequency never asks, "What do you want to keep?" It asks, "What are you finally willing to release?" That question changes everything. Many years ago, there was a woman named Izara who lived near the edge of an endless desert. People traveled from distant places to ask for her advice, believing she possessed secret knowledge. She always welcomed them with silence. No speeches. No grand lessons. Only silence. One evening, a young traveler arrived just before sunset. "I've lost everything," he said. "Tell me how to get my life back." Izara didn't answer. Instead, she handed him a small lantern and pointed toward the desert. Confused, he asked, "Should I look for something?" She smiled gently. "No." "Then why am I going?" "To discover what follows you when there's nothing left to carry." The young traveler walked into the darkness. At first, fear surrounded him. Every shadow looked dangerous. Every sound felt like a warning. But after hours of walking, the fear became quiet. Then something unexpected happened. He noticed the stars. Not because they had appeared, because he had finally stopped staring at the ground. When he returned before sunrise, Izara asked only one question. "What changed?" He looked at the lantern still glowing in his hand. "I thought the light was showing me the desert." He paused. "It was showing me myself." Izara nodded. "Now you're ready to see what daylight couldn't teach you." Think about that. How often have you searched outside yourself for answers that were waiting inside your own silence? Maybe that's why this message found you tonight. Not to give you something new, but to help you notice what has quietly been growing within you all along. If these words feel strangely personal, don't dismiss that feeling. Pay attention to it. Because in the next part, we're going somewhere deeper. We're going to talk about the moment the frequency stops whispering and starts reshaping the way reality responds to you. Viral line. The greatest shift begins the moment you stop chasing the light and realize it has been walking beside you all along. If this story touched something inside you, comment, "I let go" below, and stay with me. Because what happens next is the part most people never notice, even when it's already changing their lives. There comes a moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. No flashing lights. No voice from the sky. Just a quiet feeling that something invisible has shifted. Most people miss it because they're waiting for life to announce itself. But real change rarely arrives with noise. It arrives with recognition. Have you noticed how some decisions have become easier lately? Things that once kept you awake all night suddenly don't have the same hold on you. The approval you used to chase doesn't seem as important. Arguments that once pulled you in now feel strangely distant. You haven't become cold. You've become clear. And clarity is one of the first signs that your inner frequency is becoming stable. But here's where almost everyone gets confused. The moment your frequency begins to settle, life often looks more chaotic before it looks better. Why? Because anything built on the old version of you begins losing its foundation. Think of a river after heavy rain. For a short time, the water becomes cloudy. Not because it's ruined. Because everything resting at the bottom is being lifted to the surface. Your life works in much the same way. Old fears rise. Old memories return. Old doubts suddenly speak louder than they have in years. Many people believe this means they're moving backward. It doesn't. It often means the hidden things are finally becoming visible enough to leave. Now listen. This next part matters. Imagine standing before a giant gate made of stone. The gate has no lock, no handle, no guard. Thousands of people push against it every day. Some shout. Some blame the gate. Some give up and walk away. Then one person arrives. Instead of forcing it open, they simply become still. A soft sound echoes through the valley, and the gate slowly opens by itself. The gate didn't change. The person did. What if the opportunities you've been waiting for aren't refusing you? What if they're responding to a version of you that is still being formed? That thought can be uncomfortable, because it means the answer isn't always outside. But it also means your future isn't trapped by your past. Now let me tell you what happened after the traveler left Izara's village. For several days, nothing changed. The road looked the same. The villages looked the same. The people spoke the same words. He almost convinced himself that the journey into the desert had meant nothing. Then, without warning, he reached a small bridge where an old man was struggling to carry a heavy wooden cart. Weeks earlier, the traveler would have walked past without thinking. He had always been too busy, too distracted, too focused on his own problems. But this time, he stopped. Without being asked, he helped move the cart across the bridge. The old man smiled. "I've been waiting for someone who could hear." The traveler frowned. "Hear what?" "The pause before your decision." Those words stayed with him, because he realized something powerful. The biggest transformation hadn't been in the desert. It had happened in the tiny space between impulse and choice. That invisible pause had become larger. Inside that pause, fear no longer made every decision. Old habits no longer controlled every reaction. Something wiser had quietly taken its place. Ask yourself, have you noticed a pause growing inside you? A moment where you don't react as quickly as you used to? Where you observe before speaking? Where you breathe before deciding? Where peace feels stronger than proving yourself right? If so, don't ignore it. That pause is not weakness. It is space. And in that space, a different future begins to take shape. But here's the truth almost nobody wants to hear. As your frequency becomes stronger, not everyone will understand you. Some people will say you've changed. Others will wonder why you've become quieter. A few may even leave because they no longer recognize the version of you standing before them. Don't chase them. Don't argue. Don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Sometimes people aren't leaving because you're losing them. They're leaving because the path ahead no longer belongs to them. Viral line. Your future is created in the silent pause between who you were and the choice you make next. Take another slow breath. If this message is speaking directly to your life, comment, "I choose different." Because what comes next is the moment everything begins to connect. The frequency stops feeling like an idea and starts revealing why tonight may become the night you remember for years to come. Take one more breath. Not because you have to, because this may be the first moment today that truly belongs to you. Everything we've talked about has been leading here. The quiet. The pauses. The doors that closed. The people who drifted away. The feeling that something inside you has been changing without asking your permission. Individually, they seem like ordinary moments. Together, they tell a story. Your story. But here's where the path becomes different. Most people believe that once their frequency changes, life suddenly becomes perfect. No more problems. No more fear. No more uncertainty. That isn't how real transformation works. The frequency doesn't remove every storm. It changes the person walking through the storm. Imagine standing in the middle of a forest just before sunrise. The world is still dark. You can barely see the path. Then the first light touches the tops of the trees. The forest hasn't changed. The rocks are still there. The winding trail is still there. But now, you can see where to place your next step. That single difference changes everything. Clarity doesn't always shorten the journey. It prevents unnecessary detours. Now let me take you back to the traveler one final time. After crossing the bridge, he continued toward a city people called the City of Light. He had heard stories about it since childhood. Some believed it held ancient wisdom. Others claimed it granted answers to anyone who entered. By sunset, he finally stood before its shining gates. His heart raced. "This is it," he whispered. "I've finally arrived." But when he stepped inside, nothing happened. No voices. No visions. No miracles. Just ordinary streets. Ordinary people. Ordinary conversations. Confused, he wandered through the city until he noticed Izara sitting quietly beneath a large tree. "You knew I'd come here," he said. She smiled. "I knew you'd believe the city would change you." "It didn't." "No." "Then why did everyone call it the City of Light?" Izara looked into his eyes for a long moment. They weren't talking about the city. They were talking about the person who finally learns how to see. The traveler slowly turned around. The streets looked exactly the same, but they no longer felt ordinary. Children laughing. A woman sharing bread. An old musician playing a simple melody. Every moment carried a quiet beauty he had rushed past his entire life. The city hadn't transformed. His awareness had. And suddenly he understood something that had been hidden in plain sight all along. The world often reflects the attention you bring to it. When your mind expects only loss, loss is all it notices. When your attention begins searching for possibility, possibility starts appearing in places that always existed. Now ask yourself something. What have you been staring at for so long that you've forgotten to notice everything beside it? Have you been focusing only on what you lost, instead of what quietly arrived after it? Have you been counting closed doors, without seeing the new path opening beside them? Here's what almost nobody realizes. Attention is like sunlight. Whatever it rests on begins to grow. That is why your thoughts matter. Not because every thought magically changes reality, but because your attention shapes your decisions. Your decisions shape your habits. Your habits slowly shape your future. One quiet choice, repeated every day, can change a life that once seemed impossible to move. This is why tonight matters. Not because something outside you is claiming you, but because every moment you spend awake to your own choices strengthens the direction you're already moving. The frequency isn't asking you to become someone else. It's asking you to stop pretending you're still the person you've already outgrown. Viral line. The moment you truly see differently, the same world begins opening different doors. If these words feel like they've been waiting for you, comment, "I see clearly." Stay with me. Because one final truth remains. And it's the part that most people spend their entire lives searching for without ever realizing they were standing beside it all along. Stay with me. Because this is the point where many people expect a secret, a hidden formula, a single sentence that changes everything overnight. But the truth has always been quieter than that. The frequency doesn't suddenly choose you tonight. It has been responding to you every single day, with every choice, every thought you repeated, every moment you decided to move forward or stay where fear felt familiar. Now here's what most people never notice. There comes a night when the old version of you quietly stops asking to come back. Not because you defeated it, because you finally stopped feeding it. Think about a fire. A fire doesn't disappear because someone argues with it. It fades because no one keeps adding wood. Fear works the same way. So does doubt. So does regret. The more attention they receive, the stronger they appear. But when your attention begins feeding purpose instead, something remarkable happens. Your energy stops leaking into battles that no longer belong to you. Now let me tell you the final part of the traveler's story. Before leaving the City of Light, the traveler asked Izara one last question. If everything depends on my attention, how do I know I'm walking the right path? Izara didn't answer immediately. Instead, She handed him a small seed. It looked ordinary, almost too small to matter. "Plant this," she said. The traveler smiled politely. "How will one tiny seed answer my question?" Izara looked toward the horizon where the first rays of morning were touching the earth. "It won't answer your question today. It will answer it every day after today." Confused, he planted the seed before leaving. Days passed. Nothing happened. Weeks passed. Still nothing. More than once he thought about digging it up. Maybe it had failed. Maybe the soil was wrong. Maybe Izara had been mistaken. But he remembered her words. So instead of checking the seed, he simply watered the ground, morning after morning. Without proof. Without certainty. Without applause. Then one sunrise. A tiny green shoot broke through the earth. The traveler laughed. Not because the plant was impressive, because he finally understood. Growth had been happening the entire time. He just couldn't see it yet. How many times have you quit on yourself? Only because the roots were growing where your eyes couldn't reach? How many dreams did you abandon just before they were ready to appear? How many times did you mistake silence for failure? When life was quietly preparing the next chapter. Now listen carefully. Because this may be the reason this message found you tonight. You don't need another sign. You don't need permission. You don't need to become worthy of the life you're hoping for. You become worthy by living as the person you're already capable of becoming. One decision at a time. One conversation at a time. One sunrise at a time. The frequency doesn't reward perfection. It responds to consistency. Every peaceful choice. Every honest action. Every moment you choose growth instead of fear strengthens the direction of your life. And one day, you'll look back and realize the biggest turning point wasn't a dramatic event. It was the quiet night when you decided to stop waiting for your future and started living like it had already begun. Viral line. Your destiny doesn't arrive in one giant moment. It quietly grows from the choices you repeat when no one is watching. If you've stayed until this moment, comment, "The frequency is within me." Subscribe if you want more journeys like this. Because every message is another reminder that the answers you've been searching for may already be growing inside you. And remember, tonight was never about being claimed by a mysterious force. It was about recognizing that every day, your attention, your choices, and your actions shape the direction your life takes. The signal was never far away. It was waiting for you to become quiet enough to recognize it. For a long time, you believed the moment that changed your life would be impossible to miss. You imagined it would arrive with certainty, with absolute clarity, with a feeling so powerful that there would be no room for doubt. But life rarely works that way. The biggest turning points often look ordinary while they're happening. Only later do you realize. That was the night everything quietly began. Maybe tonight becomes one of those nights for you. Not because this video gave you magic. Not because invisible forces suddenly chose your name. But because you finally stopped running from the conversation you've been avoiding with yourself. Take another slow breath. Then ask yourself one honest question. What have you been postponing? Not because you couldn't do it. Because you were waiting to feel completely ready. Here's something most people discover too late. Readiness is rarely a feeling. It's usually a decision. A sailor doesn't wait for the ocean to become perfectly calm. A gardener doesn't stop planting because tomorrow's weather is uncertain. A musician doesn't become confident before the first performance. Confidence grows after action, not before it. Imagine standing before two paths. One is bright, crowded, comfortable. Everyone tells you to walk there. The other is quieter, less certain. No signs. No applause. Only a quiet pull inside your heart that refuses to disappear. Many people silence that feeling, not because it's wrong, because it's unfamiliar. But what if the unfamiliar path isn't dangerous? What if it's simply the road your future has been waiting for? Now let us return to Izara one final time. Years after the traveler planted the seed, he returned to the place where it had first broken through the soil. The tiny shoot had become a great tree. Its branches stretched toward the sky. Travelers rested beneath its shade. Children laughed around its roots. Birds built homes among its leaves. No one knew who planted it. No one asked. The tree didn't need recognition to fulfill its purpose. The traveler smiled. Then he understood the lesson Izara had been teaching all along. The greatest gifts you leave behind may never carry your name. In that moment, Izara appeared one last time. Older now. Gentler than ever. She asked him, "What did the tree teach you?" He looked up through the moving branches. "It taught me that growth is never only for the person growing." Izara nodded. When one life becomes stronger, many lives become lighter. Then she quietly walked away. The traveler never saw her again. But strangely, he no longer needed to. Because the voice he had searched for outside himself now lived within him. Maybe that's the real meaning of every journey. Not finding someone to follow forever, but becoming someone who can walk with wisdom even when the road becomes quiet. So before you leave, don't ask whether tonight changed your life. Ask something more powerful. What will I do differently after this moment? Because inspiration fades. Emotion fades. Even powerful words fade. But one honest action taken today can echo through years you haven't lived yet. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, choose one thing you've been avoiding. Make the phone call. Write the first page. Take the walk. Apologize. Forgive. Learn. Begin. Don't wait for another perfect sign. You have this moment. And sometimes, one moment is enough. Viral line. The life you've been waiting for begins the day you stop waiting for yourself. If this journey stayed with you, write, "I begin today" in the comments. Share this with someone who may need to hear it tonight. And as you move into tomorrow, remember this. The quietest decisions often create the loudest changes. The signal was never outside you. It was always waiting for you to answer.